The Harley-Davidson Pan America is a massive deal. It's a bike that could take them into a whole new, highly lucrative market, the large capacity adventure tourer. BMW's R1250 GS has held the top spot for many years, but if Harley can take even a small slice of the action, it'd surely be a nice little earner. But for me, more important than the financials is that it could prove that Harley can do more than just make old school cruisers and tourers. The Pan America could break some of those long-held stereotypes, and if they can do an adventure bike, then why not any other category of motorcycle in the future?
And look, the specs do look great on this bike. 150 horsepower, 123 newton meters of peak torque from this big 1250 V-twin, loads of tech in there, variable valve timing. You've got suspension that lowers as you come to a halt, so that if you're a bit shorter, you're not going to struggle with the height of a big adventure bike like this. Proper well-spec brakes from Brembo, and then bags of electronics and tech all over the bike. So I had to come down here to Cardiff Harley-Davidson to try it out for myself. If you're at all interested in demoing this bike, speak to Barry here. He knows everything you need to know about it, and he'll be more than happy to oblige to set you up with a demo. Honestly, it's a brilliant place to demo a bike like this because you've got single track roads, some smooth twisties through the mountains, some gravel roads, and plenty of beautiful scenery, so it's definitely worth the trip. And I'm gonna make the most of my day to find out if this bike is as good as it looks on paper.
From Cardiff Harley-Davidson, there's a bit of dual carriageway and motorway before you can pick your way through the valleys. I headed for the Manmol Pass, which is an easy bit of gravel road that I read about in Adventure Bike Rider magazine, and it's the ideal spot to give a big adventure bike like this a quick run around, as well as providing a pretty nice backdrop to tell you what I thought.
So I've only got the bike for a day, but I've tried to work in every type of riding that you'd want an adventure bike to be able to do. And although they tend to be marketed on this kind of like round the world off-road type ability, for me it would be a practical decision. If I was to buy a big capacity adventure bike like this, I'd want something that could smash up and down the motorway at speed in absolute comfort. And honestly, my first impressions of the Pan America in that environment are pretty strong. First up, you've got 150 horsepower and it just doesn't feel stressed at all, hammering along at 70, 80 plus. Cruise control is a must, and that works quite nicely as well. A big TFT dash, and you've got phone connectivity for navigation if you so wish. I just like something that I can see easily at a glance, and it works perfectly well. A good commanding riding position. You can see how far swept back these bars are. They're nice and wide. I'm about 5'9" or 175 centimeters, and the seating position is absolutely perfect. This standard seat goes up and down by an inch or two, and there's even a low seat option. And of course, this is the Pan America 1250 Special, and then they've up-spec'd it with the adaptive ride height, so it lifts up as you're on the move, but as you come to a stop, it drops down. So you can see I can easily reach the floor both sides, but when you're on the move, it lifts up and you've got great visibility over the traffic. I'd also say I was quite surprised at how soft and padded the seat is. Quite often they're pretty firm on modern bikes, and it has a shape that looks like it might be a touch unforgiving, but both the passenger and rider's seat feel quite squidgy. That should give you comfort over time. And you've also got rubber inserts in both sets of foot pegs to take a little bit of the vibes out of them. Wind protection is great as well. It doesn't look like the biggest screen and cockpit. In fact, it's quite low, so you get good visibility over the screen, good visibility through the screen of the road directly in front of you, but it seems to be shaped in a way that means that I don't really get any buffeting at 70 or 80. And then you've got the handguards as well that take a bit of chill off your hands, and on this special edition you've got heated grips too. I haven't needed them today at all because it's been about 25 degrees, but definitely a must in winter. Look, I want to do some more testing with it and some longer days in the saddle, but on the face of it, first impressions are pretty competitive. If you think of the KTM 1290 Super Adventure S, the 1250 GS as well, I've featured both of them very recently on the channel, put plenty of miles on both of those bikes. There are a couple of features, like the Super Adventure has adaptive cruise control, which is great. The Boxer Twin's very smooth compared to the V-twins of this bike and the KTM, but they're just little factors here and there, and this has its own strengths as well, the adaptive ride height, for example. So it really does feel like a very competitive proposition for that kind of riding. All that said, if you want a great motorway and distance tourer, you could just buy a touring bike. So why buy a big adventure bike? Because you want to go anywhere, and if it's a bit gravelly and rough and the surface gets a bit loose, you want a bike that can do that as well. Part of the fun of touring on a motorcycle is that you can go to some of those more remote places and get a bit lost. Last time I was up here, I was on the KTM 890 Adventure, which is a smaller, lighter bike, probably fair to say it's more geared towards off-roading, but had just as much fun on the Pan America today. A big bike like this is never going to be your first choice for proper off-road riding, but if you just want to take in a bit of gravel like this, then, you know, the standing position's good, the suspension can soak it all up, plenty of ability to customize the rider modes and dial back the rider aids. Decent protection as well. This has the accessory headlight guard, the radiator guard, sump guard. These engine bars are standard on the special. Hand guards that can clip off and be replaced easily. Accessory spoke wheels fitted to this one as well, and decent Michelin sort of semi-off-road tyres. The screen is super easy to adjust with one hand as well, so if you're on the move, but perhaps it's got dirty and you want to see the trail in front of you, then you can just do it one-handed, no probs. Even the weight is competitive as well. I mean, it is still a big bike, but when you put it side to side with the GS, the KTM, the Multistrada, it doesn't look bad at all. So again, I want to do a bit more testing when I get a proper press bike, but my first impressions from today are super stable, nice torquey delivery of power, and plenty of fun. And then there's the more sporty riding. When you do hit a twisty mountain road or a country back lane, you want a big powerful bike like this to deliver some level of thrills. There's plenty there from the engine. It really likes to sing when you get above 4,000 or 5,000 revs. It does properly chuck out some power. Perhaps the GS feels a bit stronger in that low to mid range, but it has a really similar feel, the Pan America, to the KTM. That lively V-twin likes to be pushed hard, likes to rev a bit, and it's just, yeah, everything you'd want in a big, quick bike. Braking is well spec with these radially mounted Brembos on floating discs, and you've got a radial master cylinder as well. I think it's a tricky balance to strike for an adventure bike like this, because if they're super sharp, then when you do get off-road, you know, they're going to feel a bit grabby and lock up too easily, and they can be a bit difficult to control. At the same time, you want a lot of power, and I feel like these do the job. They're not aggressive on the initial bite, but as you squeeze it on, lots of power, hauls up a relatively big bike with ease. I've had a bit of chance to play with some of the riding modes, so you've got sport, road, rain, a couple of off-road modes, and then a couple of custom modes where you can dial in everything from engine map, throttle response, engine braking, traction control, ABS, suspension mode. Is really quite comprehensive. And as for those suspension modes, I really like the ability to slip it into comfort for motorway riding and that kind of thing, and then firm it up when you get to a more interesting road for a bit more bias towards handling. And the ability to have those two custom modes and switch between them on the go, it really opens up a lot of flexibility around that stuff. So I'm picking up a press bike from Harley-Davidson UK tomorrow, so I'm going to have that for a week, and that'll allow me to put it through some further testing. I really want to go into more detail on the electronics, the features there, but already I can think of a few reasons to definitely consider this one if you're looking for a big adventure bike. The adaptive ride height is the big one for me because it's unique to the Pan America. If you want something that's got enough ground clearance to tackle some gravel roads and that kind of thing, but you're a bit short in the leg and you're worried you can't flat foot it, perhaps you like to take a passenger and luggage, and that's when you really do get a bit top heavy, this is a brilliant solution to it, and I can see it opening up big adventure bikes to a lot of shorter riders. I'd also say the price looks pretty good, be that the standard version or the special edition, or even a bike like this demo which has the spoke wheel accessory, the adaptive ride height. The cost is still nowhere near like the GS that I had on the channel recently. That was about 21 grand in the spec that bike was in. Feature for feature, this pretty much matches it, and so it looks like decent value for money on the face of it. The other reason is the looks as well. I honestly think, especially in this military green, that a lot of people are going to be changing their minds about the looks of this bike. It's definitely taken a bit of time to sort of mature and grow on people, but come on, look at it. In this setting, tell me that isn't a rugged looking machine that suits that sort of adventure image. I would have just been so disappointed if they'd have come out with some clone of a European adventure bike. They've done their own thing, and for me, it's totally paid off. And a massive thanks again to Barry at Cardiff Harley-Davidson. If you want to demo this bike on this incredible terrain that we have around this area, don't hesitate to hit him up. I'm sure he'll be happy to help.